What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today I want to continue to talk about what we saw in Cincinnati on Sunday as the Jets got their first victory of the season, coming back from over 15 points in the second half, and honestly, what was really maybe the most emotional part of the season, right? From everything from Woody Johnson's comments to unfortunately the passing of Nick Mangold to the trade deadline on the horizon. I think we might be looking back on this week for the Jets if this Aaron Glenn, Darren Muji rebuild does in fact happen and say this was the time that things started to turn around. I'll be talking about that not only today, but throughout the week. And also, don't forget, please click on that link, subscribe, and join the Jets Latest crew. You can become a Jets Latest insider, exclusive content, extra videos, all sorts of other perks as we go through this 2025 season. And thank you to everybody who has helped me build this channel by subscribing, by watching, by liking, by commenting, and telling a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend. Like I said, this really could be a time we look back on if the Jets do in fact rebuild this thing, not only this year in 2025, but over the course of the next few years, hopefully during Aaron Glenn's tenure. And I want to start with a guy, our running back, Breece Hall. There have been trade rumors going around Breece Hall ever since the offseason, right? The last year of his deal, what would he be? Would he get a bag? Would he be traded? We talked about it in the offseason. We talk about it now with the trading deadline. And let me tell you something. He put the Jets on his back and had one of his best performances of the season in Cincinnati. Check it out. He ran 18 times for 133 yards, 2 touchdowns. Don't forget the passing touchdown as well in the second half, right? He averaged 7.4 yards a carry, and this is what he had to say. He says, if Garrett's not playing, I need the ball at least 25 times. I hate losing, but if we lose, I want it to be on me. I want to go out swinging. This week, I was just like, I need the ball this week. They trusted me. The O-line played great, and the receivers blocked well. I think this is important because in weeks past here on Jets Latest, we've been talking that Breece Hall's like, hey, whatever they want to call, whatever the game plan is, it's good for me, right? However, there was a little bit of a change in tone when he's saying, no, I need the rock. It is a little bit different. Everybody's patience was wearing thin. The fan base was wearing thin. Woody's patience was wearing thin. And it sounds like Breece was starting to wear thin as well. But look, Breece Hall has had a very good year so far, okay? He's got 581 rushing yards. That is good for 6th best in the NFL through 8 weeks. He's on a pace for over 1,200 yards. That would be the highest for a Jets running backs all the way back since Thomas Jones ran for 1,400 plus yards back in 2009. No Jets running back has run for 1,000 yards since Chris Ivory did it 10 years ago in 2015. And you know, I always talk about like the explosive runs, the explosive carries, right? Well, Breece Hall has 18 of those, I do believe, okay? He's got 18 carries of 10 or more yards. That mark is also good for 3rd best in the NFL. So Breece Hall has had a good season. Breece Hall now finally saying he wants the rock. And the question for me now, though, is does Breece Hall saying this because he's toting a rock for the Jets? Or was he continuing a audition to put it on tape for 31 other teams? Remember, the Jets have a bye next week. So before the Jets are in action again at home against the Cleveland Browns, the NFL trade deadline will have passed. And there is so much buzz, especially last week before the Jets' first victory about, oh, the Jets are going to have a fire sale. Oh, the Jets are going to trade everybody. And Breece Hall has been chief among them. But listen to some of these other names. A lot of people think that the Jets are going to be active. I'm not so sure. Let me tell you how I see it here. And this is these kind of trade potential values have been reported by SNY reporter Connor Hughes. Breece Hall could get a 4th or 5th round pick. Alan Lazard could be out there for a 3rd round pick. Quinnen Williams, apparently, people are inquiring about as a 2nd round pick. Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Quincy Williams. So much that it inspired Jermaine Johnson last week on Twitter to put out this meme from the Wolf of Wall Street being like, I'm not leaving. And he clarified it saying that he met with Team Brass, actually. And Jermaine Johnson said, I want to be here. The Jets said, we want to have you here. And so then he went out there and said, I'm not leaving. But listen to what Breece Hall had to say. This was reported on the telecast against the Bengals. I think it was Aditi Kinkawala said that Breece Hall said to her, if y'all don't want me, that's your loss. I'll come back and kill you guys. So again, emotions running hot for the Jets. It has been so hard, right? Going 0-7. Nobody expected this. People starting to say, trying to say the right things. Even Garrett Wilson, before he got hurt, right, was saying, I didn't expect this. This was hard, but I want to be part of the turnaround. You hear Jermaine Johnson saying, no, I want to be here, right? Others like Breece Hall being like, hey, if you don't want me, I'm a come back and make y'all pay. I think this is really, the emotions were so high here. It is tough to go through 0-7. Glad they got their first win, but there's a lot of stuff surrounding here. What I would do, because listen, the Jets are not going to the playoffs, right? There's this one side about you want to keep this team together. You want them to kind of go through the fire together, build character, all that stuff. But when I see some of those names, I'm going to tell you something. I don't trade anybody on defense. I ain't trading Quincy Williams. I ain't trading Quinton Williams. I'm not trading Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, any of that. The two players that I think could be moved here ahead of the trade deadline. One is Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard is a veteran wide receiver. There was thoughts about him moving in the offseason. The Pittsburgh Steelers need another wide receiver. Aaron Rodgers loves him some Allen Lazard. And I don't think Lazard has a long-term case for this team anyway. He was brought in by the previous regime, was brought in when Aaron Rodgers was here. I think Muji and Glenn are all about getting these assets, getting young guys into the building to grow and develop. And then ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if Breece Hall is on the move, okay? And they could get maybe a second-round pick for Breece Hall, or third-round pick, a fourth-round pick for Breece Hall. Because here's the thing. I don't think they're going to resign him, right? Breece Hall is going to be in the open market. He's going to be looking for a nice payday. He's going to be looking for a payday that represents that he is the unquestioned lead back for whatever that team is as an RB1. He is that for the Jets, but the Jets also have Braylon Allen. They also have Isaiah Davis, who they kind of like. And I'm not saying Breece Hall isn't a great back, but what it is the Jets, I don't think, are going to be willing to pay Breece Hall starter, unquestioned lead back money because they have confidence, faith, and want to give snaps to Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. And I think that's where the rubber's going to meet the road. So if that is the case, and in the short term for the rest of this season, you ain't going to get anything done this year, I would not be surprised if Breece Hall is actually on the move. And I think Breece Hall heard the writing on the walls like, if y'all, that's your loss, and then went out there and went scorched earth with one of his best outings of the season last week against the Bengals, showing everybody, yeah, man, I can be a difference for your team, even if that team is not the green and white. I've been talking about, though, emotions running high this week, right? I'm going to be talking about later on in the week. Justin Fields was very vulnerable, was very open, was very candid about his ups and downs last week in terms of what Woody said, the struggles of the team and all that. But I do want to end this episode of Jets Latest once again talking about how the entire Jets community had high emotions when we learned on Sunday about the passing of Ring of Honor member, center, All-Pro, Nick Mangold. Nick Mangold passed away on Sunday at the age of only 41 years old as a result of complications from his kidney disease. Obviously, we send our thoughts and prayers, our condolences to the Mangold family, his wife Jennifer, his 4 children. I mean, Nick Mangold, if you're a Jets fan, you know Nick Mangold was one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL throughout his 11 seasons with the Jets. In 11 years, he was a Pro Bowler 7 times, an All-Pro, meaning the best center in the league. Twice. Played in 164 games for the Jets and was inducted to the Jets Ring of Honor in 2022. Had a big personality, was really a heart and soul of that offensive line. Remember, the offensive line was drafted same year with DeBrickashaw Ferguson and had Faneca on that line, right? The last time the Jets really did have that dominant offensive line protecting, I believe it was Chad Pennington, taking the Jets to the playoffs. The last time this team was like really, really good, to be honest, right? And Nick Mangold was truly a heart and soul piece of that. And that's what Aaron Glenn had to say as well. He goes, he was the heart and soul of this team. It's tough to hear that, especially a guy that's a true Jet through and through, that made his presence felt. Prayers to his family, and that's tough to hear because of who he was as a person. He was still involved with the Jets, still involved with the community, and honestly, at 41 years old, you've heard everybody. I've seen a lot of former Jets out there, from Willie Colon to Bart Scott to Rex Ryan, all, sharing their memories. And so we here at Jets Latest also want to, kind of send our prayers up there for Nick Mangold. Rest in peace, rest in power, and to the Mangold family going through this difficult time. But, when you put it all together, I really do believe it's kind of the emotions that are out there, emotions that are out there that I think could be a good thing for this Jets team. Could be a good thing for this Jets team as we go through the fire kind of together, right? And that's what I think is going to wind up happening here with these Jets as we move along here in the 2025 season. And so um, I would say, maybe this is something, an opportunity to go back into the bunker after the bye, right, and see what we look like. See if this team is a tighter knit team. See if this team is the group that is going to go together for the second half of the season. And so people like Old Dave, people like Bird Flu, people like our Jets latest kind of regulars. I want to remind you that, as I say all the time, the Detroit Lions with Aaron Glenn started 0-10-1, finished 3-13-1 their first season under Dan Campbell, and we will see what this first season under Aaron Glenn looks like. I know there are plenty of comments out there that are still about, trading Fields and releasing Fields and firing Glenn. And listen, they're not all of a sudden going to rip off 7 wins in a row, in my opinion. They're not going to be on the graphic for the playoffs come December, right? But these are the kinds of things that you look back on that form teams and form brotherhoods and form culture. And maybe that's what we started to see this week here with the Jets, Jets. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Remember, watch these videos, like these videos, subscribe to the Jets Latest channel, tell a friend to tell a friend. We really appreciate it. And if you want to hear more from me, the spitting statistician Dane Martinez, I am the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on SiriusXM, channel 87. Fantasy tools, rankings, content, all sorts of great stuff to help you win your leagues, win that cash, and become a better sports bettor as well. I'm talking the prop shop where you could shop lines. I'm talking about projections and edges for every game. So check me out over there. Old Dave 1000, one of my day one Jets latest regulars, says, step up players, step up coaches, step up fans. Let's get our first win. We did, in fact, get our first win. We'll see what else is on the horizon. This second half of the season is going to be very interesting to see who are the people in that building, who continues to develop, and if this kind of is the beginning of climbing out of rock bottom like I have talked about over the last couple of weeks. I will be here to talk about it. The Jets are on bye, so plenty of stuff to investigate, and we will go forward here in this 2025 season. Rest in peace, rest in power to Nick Mangold as well. We'll talk about it more throughout the week, but for this episode of Jets Latest, we out of here. Peace.